When I saw my mother-in-law holding my medical file tighter than her own purse, I knew something was wrong. The way her fingers clutched the folder, white-knuckled, protective, almost territorial, told me that whatever was inside wasn't just mine anymore. It was hers. At that moment, I didn't yet understand what she'd done. I didn't know she had turned my pregnancy, my joy, into her weapon. But let me start where it all began. My name is Raina, and I've always been what people call quiet strength. I work as a primary school teacher, the kind of job that requires patience, a soft voice, and the ability to smile through exhaustion. When I married Daniel, my college sweetheart, I thought I was stepping into a life of peace. Daniel was kind, grounded, and funny in a quiet way. He had those gentle eyes that make you believe in good men. His mother, Margaret, seemed charming at first, the kind of woman who wore pearls to breakfast and said things like, "Family is everything," as if it were scripture. For the first few months, things were fine. Margaret lived nearby and would drop by unannounced with casseroles and unsolicited advice. I tried to see it as love, not control. She'd say, "You should use butter, not oil. Men taste the difference." Or, "Daniel likes his shirts ironed this way. I can show you, dear." I smiled through it, thinking that maybe this was what all marriages came with, an extra mother trying to stay relevant. Daniel adored his mother, and that made it harder for me to complain. He'd laugh it off. "That's just mom being mom. She means well." Maybe she did. But something in her eyes always told me she didn't want to share him. Months turned into a year, and then one cold morning in early March, I found out I was pregnant. I still remember standing in our small bathroom, holding that little stick that changed color faster than I could blink. My heart pounded. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. When Daniel came home that evening, I greeted him at the door with trembling hands and whispered, "You're going to be a dad." He froze, then pulled me into his arms so tightly I could feel his heartbeat against my cheek. We spent that night dreaming names, nursery colors, what kind of parents we wanted to be. It was one of those rare, perfect nights you wish you could freeze forever. I told him I wanted to keep the news between us for a while, just until the first trimester passed. He agreed. But the next day, when his mother called and asked why I hadn't been answering, I heard him hesitate. "Everything's fine, Mom. Raina's just resting more lately." And just like that, Margaret started to sense something. She appeared at our house 2 days later, holding a basket of fruits and her usual intrusive warmth. "Resting, That sounds suspicious." She winked, placing the basket on the counter. "Is there something you two want to tell me?" I smiled politely, deflecting. But her gaze lingered, sharp and searching. From that day on, she called every morning, sometimes twice. She began dropping off vitamin-rich soups, leaving pamphlets about prenatal care on my doorstep before I'd even said a word. It should have been sweet, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like she was watching me, waiting. At 8 weeks, I finally went to see my doctor, Dr. Patel, who'd been my physician for years. When I walked into the waiting room, to my surprise and confusion, Margaret was already there, sitting, smiling. "Oh, sweetheart, I thought I'd come along. Daniel told me you had your checkup today." My stomach turned. Daniel hadn't told her. I knew he hadn't. I wanted to protest, but she'd already signed her name at the reception desk as my emergency contact. That day, I learned something. When Margaret wanted to be part of something, she didn't ask. She inserted herself. During the consultation, she interrupted constantly. "She shouldn't lift anything heavy. Make sure she avoids spicy food, doctor. She's sensitive." Dr. Patel glanced at me, perhaps reading my silent plea. But she remained professional. When it came time to discuss test results, Margaret leaned forward like she was the one expecting. And when I tried to speak privately with the doctor afterward, I realized Margaret had followed me into the hallway. "You can tell me anything," she said softly, almost too softly. "We're family." I smiled. But that night, I cried in the shower. I told Daniel I needed space from her, that I felt suffocated. He sighed. "She's just excited, Raina. She's finally going to be a grandmother." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being emotional. But deep down, something cold was growing. A small knot of dread I couldn't name yet. By the end of my first trimester, Margaret had taken full charge of my pregnancy, as if I were a vessel she owned. She insisted on driving me to every appointment. She controlled what I ate, what I wore, even when I slept. When I once rescheduled an appointment myself, she arrived at my door furious, waving her phone. I called Dr. Patel's office to confirm, and they said you canceled. Why would you hide that from me? I stood there, stunned. Because it's my body, Margaret. My pregnancy. Her face hardened. "It's our grandchild, don't forget that." That was the first time I saw it. Not love, not concern, but ownership. A spark of control that made me realize she didn't see me as a woman carrying her grandchild. She saw me as an obstacle standing between her and her next possession. The following month, something stranger happened. My doctor called to remind me of a test I'd supposedly already taken, but I hadn't. "Mrs. Raina, your blood work showed some mild anemia, but we'll recheck in a week." I froze. "What blood work?" I asked. Dr. Patel hesitated. "Your mother-in-law brought in the results from your last test. She said she'd discuss them with you." I hung up slowly, my hand trembling. Margaret had intercepted my medical results. That was the first moment I truly felt afraid. One night, as Daniel slept, I opened my phone and searched. "Can someone else access your medical records without permission?" The results made me nauseous. Illegal. Violation of privacy. Potential fraud. I looked over at my husband, peaceful, unaware, and I felt something break quietly inside me. It wasn't just about boundaries anymore. Something darker was happening, and I needed to find out what. It started small, so small, I might have ignored it if it hadn't been for how quiet the house had become. After I moved into my mother-in-law's home for care, she made sure I had everything I needed, or so it seemed. Every morning she'd bring me warm milk with saffron, insist I take my vitamins, and then she'd sit across from me, watching until I swallowed every pill. At first, I thought it was kindness. But kindness shouldn't make your stomach tighten. She'd check my phone sometimes, pretending to be casual. "Just making sure your mother doesn't worry too much," she'd say. When I asked if I could visit my doctor again, my doctor, not the one she'd picked, her voice softened in that dangerous way only some women can manage. "Oh, sweetheart, Dr. Sharma's clinic is too far. You don't need the stress of traveling in your condition. My family doctor is just as good. Trust me." And I did. For a while. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was low but sharp, a tone she never used with me. "No, don't tell him yet," she whispered. "The timing isn't right. I'll handle her." Handle me? Something inside me snapped awake. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was talking about something else. Maybe about my husband, Arav. But when I walked into the room, she hung up quickly and smiled too brightly. "Oh dear, you're up already? You should be resting." I remember the smell of jasmine from the incense behind her, the faint buzz of the ceiling fan, and the heavy feeling that someone, was lying to me. Days passed, and Arav was working late more often. When I called him, my mother-in-law would always answer first. "He's busy, Beta. You know how important this project is. Don't bother him with small things." I began to feel like a guest in my own life. Even the neighbors had started treating me differently. When I stepped outside, the woman next door, Mrs. Reddy, smiled politely, but not warmly. She used to ask about the baby, about my cravings, about how I was feeling. Now, she just said, "Take care," and closed her gate quickly. I didn't understand it then, but I would soon. That evening, I decided to sneak a call to my mother. The landline was in the hallway, and my mother-in-law had gone to the temple. As I dialed, I felt a strange thrill of guilt, like a child breaking curfew. My mother answered, her voice trembling. "Beta, are you okay? Why haven't you been answering my calls?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "I never got any." There was a pause. Then she said softly, "I've been calling for weeks. Your mother-in-law said you weren't feeling well." She said, "The pregnancy wasn't real." I felt my knees give way. "What? What are you saying?" "She told us the doctor made a mistake, that you had a false test. She said you were resting because you were heartbroken." The world tilted. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. My hand trembled so much I nearly dropped the receiver. She'd told my family, and possibly everyone, that I wasn't even pregnant. When my mother-in-law came home, I confronted her. The sun was setting through the curtains, making the room glow orange. She set down her prayer basket calmly, as if she'd been expecting it. "Why did you lie to my family?" I asked, my voice breaking. She didn't deny it. She just sighed. That slow, pitying sigh that makes your blood boil. "Because they worry too much. It's not good for you, dear. You need peace, not gossip." "Peace?" I whispered. "You told them my baby doesn't exist." She looked me straight in the eye. "Sometimes the truth causes more harm than lies." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt louder: the tick of the wall clock, the rustle of the curtains, the sound of her soft footsteps outside my door. And then I realized something. I hadn't seen any of my medical reports since moving here. Not one ultrasound photo. Not one prescription in my own name. I was living inside a story she controlled, and I didn't even know what page I was on anymore. The next morning, I made a decision. I would visit my doctor, no matter what she said. I waited until she left for her morning prayers. Then I slipped out quietly, clutching my purse against my belly like a shield. The sun was harsh, and the road to the clinic felt longer than I remembered. When I finally reached, the nurse at the reception frowned. "Ma'am, we haven't seen you in months. Did you change clinics?" I shook my head. "No, my mother-in-law said you'd sent my records to another doctor." The nurse hesitated. "We never send files without a patient's signature." Something cold crawled down my spine. When I asked for my latest test results, she handed me a thin folder. Inside were only 2 old reports, from before I moved into my mother-in-law's house. No new ultrasounds, no updated notes. The baby was fine then. But after that, there was nothing. That's when I realized, whatever she was hiding, it wasn't just from the family. It was from me. When I came home, she was waiting on the porch, her expression calm, too calm. "Where were you?" she asked softly. "At the clinic." A long silence. Then she smiled, but her eyes didn't. "You shouldn't have done that. Some things are better left unseen." I clutched my bag tighter, heart racing. "What have you done, Ma?" Her smile faded. She stepped closer, whispering, "You'll understand soon enough. Just trust me a little longer." But that night, as I lay awake listening to her footsteps pacing outside my door, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't love. It was control. It was a Thursday morning when everything fell apart. I woke up to the sound of the front door slamming. Through the half-open window, I saw my husband, Arav, rushing to his car. He didn't even look back. My mother-in-law stood by the doorway, arms crossed, watching him drive away with that same unreadable calm. When I asked what happened, she simply said, "He needed space. You shouldn't bother him right now." Her tone had that practiced softness, like silk covering a blade, but something was wrong. Arav hadn't spoken to me properly in days. Every time I called him, his replies were short, distracted, and now he was gone without a word. I went to my room and opened the wardrobe, searching for comfort. Maybe one of his shirts, the ones that still smelled faintly of cologne and city dust. But instead, tucked behind my clothes, I found a brown envelope. No name, no markings, just sealed, heavy, deliberate. Inside were medical bills in my name, except they weren't mine. The hospital listed wasn't the one my mother-in-law had taken me to, and the dates were all recent. There were tests, ultrasounds, checkups, consultations, but none that I'd attended. The blood drained from my face. Someone had been using my name. For months. That evening, I waited until she went to her prayer group. Then I went to her room, something I had never done before. It was spotless, almost unnaturally so. Everything was arranged in neat, symmetrical order. Her shawl stacked perfectly, bottles labeled, a faint smell of sandalwood in the air. And then I saw it. A locked drawer in her dressing table. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe more bills. Maybe nothing at all. But when I found the small brass key under her jewelry box and turned it, what I saw made my knees weaken. Inside were ultrasound photos. Mine. But the dates on them were altered. And there were two versions of every report. One clean, one marked in red pen, with words scribbled like warnings. Patient unstable. Advised against disclosure. Confidential. Family not informed. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. Why would she hide these from me? Why would she tell others I wasn't pregnant, while hiding proof that I was? I heard footsteps approaching and quickly shut the drawer, locking it again just as the door opened. She stood there, holding a tray of tea. Her eyes swept the room, then settled on my trembling hands. "What are you doing in here, Beta?" she asked softly. I forced a smile. "Just looking for you." I wanted to talk. She set the tray down, her movements slow, controlled. "About what?" "About the reports. About why you told everyone I wasn't pregnant." Her eyes hardened. For the first time, she didn't even pretend to smile. "You weren't ready to be a mother." "Not yet. I was only trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I whispered. "From what?" "From yourself. From the choices you keep making." Her voice grew sharper now, words laced with something that sounded almost like resentment. "I saw the way you live, the way you talk, always thinking you know better. You don't understand what it takes to hold a family together." She stepped closer, her face illuminated by the weak yellow light from the hall. "Do you think I didn't raise Arav alone for 10 years while his father worked abroad? I kept this family together with my bare hands. And now you want to come in and take everything?" I shook my head, trying to make sense of her words. "What are you talking about?" She laughed, a sound I'd never heard from her before. Bitter, tired, almost broken. "Do you really think he wanted this baby?" The words hit me like a blow. "Arav?" I whispered. She nodded. "He told me. He's not ready. You trapped him. You forced him to choose between you and his future. So yes, I hid your pregnancy. I told the family you weren't expecting. Because that baby could destroy everything he's worked for." I felt my stomach tighten, both from anger and fear. "You lied to everyone. You lied to me. I saved you from humiliation." She snapped. "You should be thanking me." My voice broke. "Where is Arav now?" "He's gone to clear his head," she said coolly. "I told him I'd take care of things here. I always do." She turned away, picking up her prayer beads as if the conversation were over. Something inside me cracked. For months I had trusted her. I'd believed every gentle word, every fake smile. But now, standing there, I saw her for what she really was, not a protector, not a caregiver, but a puppeteer pulling every string, and I was done being silent. That night, I called my doctor again, the one she'd banned me from seeing. I begged him to tell me the truth. His voice was hesitant. "Ma'am, I've been trying to reach you. Your reports. There's something wrong." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "You're healthy, but your checkups were being falsified. Someone's been altering your medical file. It shows you're not pregnant, even though the early scans confirmed you were. Someone changed the data." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room spun. "Why would anyone do that?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Whoever did wanted your pregnancy to disappear from the record." I hung up, trembling. Then I realized she had taken control of everything. My body, my records, my story. She had made me invisible, but not anymore. I opened my phone, typed a message to Arav, a simple one. "We need to talk tonight, because tomorrow, the truth was going to see the light." And for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan hummed above me like a restless clock. Every rotation felt like a reminder of how long I'd allowed someone else to dictate my life, my pregnancy, my body, my story. By midnight, I'd made up my mind. Enough silence, enough obedience. It was time to take back what was mine. At 6 a.m., I texted Arav again. "Please come home, I have something you need to see." He didn't reply, so I sent the ultrasound photos. The ones I'd found hidden in his mother's drawer, then the falsified ones, with dates altered and notes scribbled in red ink. Within minutes, he called. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, voice low, tense. "From your mother's room," I said quietly. "You need to hear what she's been doing." He was silent for a long time. Then, in a tired voice, he said, "I'm coming." When he arrived that afternoon, the house was unnervingly quiet. My mother-in-law was sitting in the living room, sipping her tea, dressed in her usual pastel sari, the picture of calm respectability. She looked up, surprised but composed, as Arav walked in behind me. "Oh, you're home early," she said sweetly. "We need to talk," he replied. Her hand froze on the teacup handle. "About what, Beta?" I stepped forward, holding the folder of documents. "About this." She didn't look at the papers. Just me. And in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't noticed before. Not guilt, not fear, but calculation. "So you went through my things," she said evenly. "You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have forged my medical records." I shot back. Arav glanced between us, confused, torn. "Mom, what is she talking about?" She smiled. Too easily. "She's just upset, Beta. The hormones, the stress." "Stop it," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "You lied to him. You lied to everyone. You told them I wasn't pregnant, when you knew I was." Arav's face drained of color. "What? You told people she wasn't. Why?" Her mask cracked. "Because it wasn't supposed to happen like this," she snapped. "You're not ready, Arav. You have a new job, a promotion waiting. And she wants to tie you down with a baby before you even know who you are." Arav stepped back, as if struck. "Mom, that's not your decision to make." She stood, trembling with fury. "Everything I've ever done was for you. You think she loves you? She's using you, just like your father used me." The room went still. Even Arav didn't know what to say. "What are you talking about?" I asked softly. Her eyes glistened. "He left me for another woman when you were 10. She took everything, the money, the house, the respect. I swore I'd never let another woman ruin my son's life the way she ruined mine." The words hung in the air, heavy and bitter. For the first time, I saw not a monster, but a broken woman still living inside her old wounds. but that didn't excuse what she had done. "I am not your past," I said quietly. "And this child is not your revenge." She flinched, but said nothing. I turned to Arav, voice shaking. "She changed my hospital records. She told everyone I wasn't pregnant. My doctor confirmed it. Someone logged into my patient file and falsified the results." He looked at his mother. "Is that true?" Her lips trembled. I just wanted more time. To make sure she was stable. That the baby. You had no right." He cut her off. "No right at all." I watched him walk to the table, pick up the folder, and stare at the photos, the proof of both my pregnancy and her deceit. Then, in a voice quieter than I'd ever heard him use, he said, "I believed you when you said she was too emotional. I believed you when you said she needed rest. But you made me doubt my own wife." Her face broke then, a mix of guilt and disbelief. "I was protecting you, Arav." "No, Mom," he said softly. "You were protecting yourself." After that day, things began to change. Arav moved me back under the care of my real doctor. He apologized, over and over, for not seeing it sooner. But trust, once cracked, doesn't heal overnight. I spent weeks trying to breathe again, to feel normal again. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about everything she'd done behind closed doors. How she'd quietly erased my pregnancy from existence. Not out of malice, but fear. And yet, fear disguised as love can still destroy. So, I made a decision. One morning, I walked into her room. She was sitting by the window, folding clothes, her face calm but older somehow. I sat beside her, wordless for a long time. Then I said, "I'm leaving for a few months. My doctor wants me to stay with my sister until the baby comes." She didn't look up. "You don't have to go." "I do," I said gently. "I need space, and I think you do too." For the first time, she didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes glistening with something that looked like regret. "I only wanted what was best," she whispered. "Then let me decide what's best for me," I said softly, and I left. That night, as Arav packed our things, I stood at the doorway, watching her through the window. She was praying, maybe for forgiveness, maybe for control, maybe just for peace. And though part of me still ached with anger, another part, the quieter part, hoped she'd finally find it. The confrontation had already shaken the house, but what came next changed everything. Within a few days, the story began to spread, first among relatives, then neighbors, and finally the entire community. Someone had recorded part of the confrontation on their phone, the part where my mother-in-law screamed that she did it to protect the family name. That video was now everywhere. Everywhere I went. The market, the clinic, even church. People whispered, "Did you hear what she did to her daughter-in-law?" For years, she had been known as the perfect matriarch, respected, feared, admired. Now, the same people she once controlled wouldn't even meet her eyes. My husband, Ryan, could no longer hide behind silence. His mother's actions had destroyed the very image he had tried to protect. At work, his colleagues avoided him. At home, the air between us was thick with things unsaid. One night, I found him sitting alone, staring at his wedding ring. "I thought protecting her meant keeping peace," he said softly. "But I was protecting the wrong person." For the first time, he apologized, not just with words, but with tears. The woman who once ruled the household now sat alone in the corner room. Her friends stopped visiting. Her own sisters avoided her calls. She tried to explain herself. "I only wanted what was best for my son." But no one listened anymore. Her pride had turned into pity in the eyes of everyone she once controlled. One morning, I found her crying, clutching the ultrasound photo she had hidden from me months ago. It was the first time I saw her not as a monster, but as a broken woman haunted by her own mistakes. The turning point came at a family gathering, a wedding, of all things. As I entered with my husband, every eye turned toward us. People murmured, expecting drama. My mother-in-law stood in the center, fragile but defiant. When her older brother approached her, he said loudly, "You brought shame to your daughter-in-law, and to all of us." Her face crumbled. For the first time, she had no defense, no excuses, no manipulation. The matriarch everyone once feared now stood stripped of power, surrounded by judgment. In the weeks that followed, I gave birth, a beautiful, healthy baby girl. As I held my daughter for the first time, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. My mother-in-law came to visit quietly. She stood at the door, trembling. "She looks like you," she whispered. "I hope she never has to forgive someone like me." I didn't say anything. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give easily, but I could see she was already living her punishment. Her fall wasn't from wealth or status, it was from respect. And in our community, that was the harshest consequence of all. Months later, people still talked about what happened, not as gossip, but as a lesson. They said, "This is what happens when pride becomes poison." As for me, I rebuilt, not just my home, but my sense of self. I started a small blog for women like me, sharing stories of strength and survival. And each time I wrote, I remembered how far I had come, from silence to voice, from fear to power. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is healing in public. Months passed since the scandal. The noise faded, whispers stopped, and life tried to return to normal. But silence doesn't always mean peace. My husband and I focused on our newborn daughter, Hannah. She became our world. Her laughter filled the house that once echoed with tension. But every time I looked at her, I remembered what was almost taken from me. My mother-in-law hadn't visited since that day at the hospital. Part of me didn't want her to, but another part, a quieter, gentler part, wondered if she ever slept peacefully again. It was a rainy afternoon when I heard a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, she was standing there, holding a small white bundle wrapped in cloth. It wasn't a gift. It was the wooden box she had used to hide my ultrasound reports. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "I couldn't keep it anymore," she said quietly. "It belongs to you." She handed me the box and stepped back, as if afraid to come in. Inside the box, I found my baby's first ultrasound, a note I had written months ago begging to see the doctor, and an old photograph of her holding my husband as a baby. There was writing on the back, "For my son, so he'll never grow up without a mother's protection." And suddenly, I understood. She had done terrible things, not out of hate, but out of fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing her son, the way she once lost her own mother too soon. I asked her to come in. She hesitated, then stepped across the threshold, slowly, as if walking into a memory. We sat across from each other at the table where she once ruled the family with her silence and expectations. Now, she looked small, human. "I've spent my whole life trying to protect what I love," she said softly, "but I never realized I was destroying it in the process." Her voice cracked. "You were right to hate me. I just want you to know, I hate who I became too." For a long time, I didn't answer. I thought of all the nights I cried, the doctor visits I missed, the fear she made me live with. But I also thought of my daughter, growing up in a house divided by bitterness. "I can't forget," I said finally, "but maybe I can forgive." Tears rolled down her face. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No hugs, no music. Just two women letting go of years of pain in the quietest way possible. As she left, she turned to look at my daughter, sleeping in her cradle. She bent down and whispered something I couldn't hear. When I asked what she said, she smiled weakly. I told her to grow up brave enough to love and wise enough to let go. That night, I placed the wooden box in my closet, but I didn't lock it away. It wasn't a symbol of pain anymore. It was a reminder that even the deepest wounds can heal if you let them breathe. Weeks later, I invited her for dinner. No tension, no pretense, just family. My husband cooked, my daughter giggled, and for the first time in years, laughter filled the house without guilt. At one point, my mother-in-law looked up and said, "I never thought I'd be here again." I smiled gently. "Neither did I. But maybe we both deserve a second chance." She nodded, eyes glistening, and for the first time, she looked truly free. Months later, people in the community stopped talking about the scandal. They talked about something else: how forgiveness can rebuild what shame once destroyed. My blog began to grow. Women wrote to me, sharing their own stories of control, motherhood, and healing. And every time I responded, I thought of my mother-in-law's trembling hands, her broken voice, and the courage it took to say I'm sorry, because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the final act of strength, the one that sets everyone free. When I look back now, I don't see a story about control or manipulation anymore. I see a story about fear, and how fear can twist love into something unrecognizable. My mother-in-law wasn't born cruel. She was born afraid. Afraid of losing the people she loved. Afraid of being forgotten. And in trying to hold on, she broke the very bond she wanted to protect. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the ones who've never learned how to live without control. They build walls out of protection, not realizing those same walls keep love out too. But here's what I learned. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means looking pain in the eye and saying, "You don't own me anymore." It means choosing peace for yourself, for your child, for your future. When my daughter grows up, I'll tell her this story, not to make her afraid of love or family, but to remind her that strength isn't in revenge, it's in letting go, when holding on only hurts. So I'll ask you, if someone you loved betrayed your trust, would you have found it in your heart to forgive them? Or would you have walked away forever? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes, the only way we truly heal is by sharing our stories. This was my story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the stories we tell are the bridges we build toward healing.